Our cover story tonight picks up from where we left last week. The India-China reset. Now that the big meeting has happened, we need to look at the road ahead, the Wuhan roadmap we are calling it. And for those who did not follow our coverage in Wuhan, here's a brief background. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi travelled to central China's Hubei province in Wuhan. He held an informal dialogue with Chinese President Xi Jinping, and this was a rare interaction between the two leaders. The aim was to reset ties, dispel misunderstanding and make a new start. Over the course of 2 days, the Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese President spent some 9 hours together. They held 6 meetings. They covered the entire gamut of outstanding issues between the two countries. The first day, there was delegation-level talks apart from one-on-one meetings between the heads of state. Listen in to what Prime Minister Modi had to say about the India-China relationship.
विश्व इस बात का गवाह है और बहुत इन डेप्थ स्टडी हुआ है कि पिछले 2000 साल के इतिहास में 1600 साल ऐसे गए हैं, 1600 years, जिसमें चीन और भारत की अर्थव्यवस्था ने पूरे विश्व की अर्थव्यवस्था को गति दी है, ताकत दी है। और हम दो देशों की अर्थव्यवस्था 2000 में से 1600 वर्ष तक करीब 50% हिस्सा हम दोनों का था और बाकी 50% में सारी दुनिया सिमटी हुई थी। 16 साल लगातार दो देशों का इतना बड़ा प्रभाव, ये बहुत बड़ी बात होती है।
Well, the statement was not made out of the blue. It was backed by some rather interesting and little-known facts. Sources tell WION that the Indian Prime Minister dwelt on the potential of the combined economic might of the two nations. He discussed his thoughts at length with the Chinese president during a boat ride on the East Lake. And President Xi, we are told, was all ears. Look at these images. This is what he was discussing. The figures of what India and China together can achieve, have achieved in the past. Prime Minister Modi is believed to have outlined the possibilities and the gains from a stronger economic partnership. It has been done in the past, and historical data backs this theory. Tonight, we bring you some of those numbers that reflect what this diplomatic joint venture, as we're calling it, can achieve, what it has achieved in the past. Like the Prime Minister said, India and China have driven the world economy for 1600 years. Let's take a closer look at the data put together by economist Angus Maddison. And to better understand Maddison's theory, it's worth looking at the economic history of the world in the last 2000 years. This may look like a daunting graph, but we'll try to understand and explain to you what it really means. The initial years were a golden period for India and China, the era when India was called the golden bird of the world. And you can see how well India did. This is the golden period of India's economy. India was well ahead of the world, even ahead of China. It had a share of more than 30% of the world's GDP. And if we club India and China's share, the number goes up to well over 50%. That's what the two countries achieved together in the past. Now look at the numbers 1,000 years later. 1,000 years later, there is a slight change. India's economy has dipped slightly, but it still remains the best performing in the world. The story has not changed very much. India's share of the world's GDP is nearly 29%. China, whose share was nearly 23%, was placed second in the world. This is China's GDP, and together they again made up more than 50% of the world's trading activity. Another point to note here is that both these countries achieved this status without any foul play. India and China's growth was fair, and business activity was done through sustainable means. But the downturn began post the 1600s. You see how India's GDP goes down, India's growth goes down post the 1600s, and that is when the Mughals came in. India faced invasion by the Mughals. In the 1900s, India and China's share in global GDP dropped to single digits. These are the 1900s. Look at where the two countries have come. Rock bottom. This was the time when India was being ruled by the British. The rule of the Raj broke India's economy. A similar invasion by the Japanese ruined China's economy. The road to recovery began 50 years later. And while China has recorded an acceleration in economic growth, India still has a lot of catching up to do. Look at how fast China has grown. India, of course, still far behind. And Here India and China can join hands. We are saying both sides want a revival. Both sides want to reclaim their position at the very top. The key takeaway of the Wuhan summit was that leaders on both sides would like to take forward their relationship in a manner that enables the rise of the two Asian giants so that they can dominate the 21st century. And this is why the Chinese are keen to act on Prime Minister Modi's proposal. More than anything else, this is an economic partnership, we must understand, one that benefits both the countries. Of course, there is more to the India-China relationship than trade. As two emerging powers, they're focusing on the many points of convergence to expand their relationship and assume leadership roles on issues that impact people around the world, not just in these two countries. Our next report explores those possibilities.
The informal meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping has paved the way for a reset in ties. Before the talks, the India-China relationship was under considerable stress, mainly due to the Doklam standoff of 2017. This period of thaw could potentially be the beginning of a new chapter for both countries.
They shared similar views on the international situation, the historical positions of China and India, and the development stages and goals. During the conversation, they found themselves highly agreeing with each other from time to time. This once again shows that China and India are natural cooperative partners. Friendship and win-win cooperation is the inevitable choice for both the countries.
The meeting between leaders of China and India has opened the doors to possibilities. India and China could expand their cooperation against terrorism. Both countries are hubs of development of technology. They could consider joining hands to take on more established countries in the West. New Delhi and Beijing can also exchange notes on infrastructure development, a dire need for the two developing nations. In looking at the changing attitude of the United States, India and China could also potentially join hands for energy security and climate change. New Delhi and Beijing are already part of the right groupings to enable a discussion on these issues of mutual interest. The ball has been set rolling in some areas. As part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or SCO, India continues to raise its voice against terrorism. After the last meeting between foreign ministers, a statement emphasized on the need for the international community to come up with collective approaches to counter the threats posed by terrorism. India will take part in joint military drills with China and other SCO members in Russia later this year. Pakistan will also be a part of these drills. While the informal summit may have opened up possibilities, there is still a degree of skepticism against China. Both sides have given the impression that the talks were successful, but India should not let its guard down just yet. The foundation laid for a better relationship in Wuhan could still be tested. Bureau Report, WION.